Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Doretha Walker, the Chief Mission Officer of the YWCA Central Alabama, and welcome to Why We Talk, Centering Survivors, Part 1, the Practitioners. And in honor of listening to all the voices in the room and honoring the lived experiences of others, I'm going to ask our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. So Kelly, let's start with you.
Good afternoon. I am Kelly Klehm, the Director of Hope Initiatives at One Place Family Justice Center here in Birmingham.
Danna.
Good afternoon. My name is Perdue-Melton, and I am the supervising therapist here at the YWCA Central Alabama.
And not last but not least, Anna.
Good afternoon. My name is Anna Ockert, and I'm a victim and court advocate with the Hispanic Interest Coalition of Alabama, housed in One Place.
Thank you, Anna, and I apologize for mispronouncing your name. 1 in 4 women, I'm going to start off with some statistics. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner physical violence and or stalking, with impacts such as injury, fearfulness, and post-traumatic stress. 1 in 3 women have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. This includes a range of behaviors, shoving, pushing, and in some cases we may not even consider it domestic violence, us as being lay people. Our 24-hour crisis line has responded to 2,366 calls in 2020. That is 400 more than we had in 2021. What I think that most of us don't realize is that domestic violence covers all socioeconomic groups, all genders, all races, and all religions. With that being said, what are the elements of domestic violence you encounter in your role? And I would like each of you to answer this question.
I can just start and be kind of quick. I am not a frontline person here at One Place, but I have served answering the phones for a couple of years here. And I know that we get calls from victims or survivors themselves. We get calls from concerned family members who are asking, how can I think that my daughter or my friend or a colleague or someone I work with is maybe in a bad relationship? How can I help this person? What should I do? We also get law enforcement officers who are bringing victims to our family justice center so that they can meet with the YW advocates or with a HICA advocate and get a strangulation exam from a YW forensic nurse. So we kind of see a wide range of survivors here. And a lot of times we get calls from people who don't know if they are a victim because they have not been actually like physically injured. So I think it's important that when we're talking about domestic violence, that we're saying that it is more than a black eye or a push against the wall or breaking bones or something. It can be that economic abuse. It can be coercion and threats of violence and not just physical violence.
Thank you for that. I think that is an important distinction because, you know, when you think about it as from the outside, someone would say, well, how can you not know it's domestic violence? But when you, like, as you explain, when you go into what it actually is, there are many people who are victims of it and they don't realize that it has a name and that's what it's called. Thank you for that.
I'll jump in after Kelly. So for us, I work directly with the Hispanic community, the immigrant community, and we see a lot of fear. That's one of the things that pops out. And with fear comes fear of making that police report, because there could be fear of deportation if they are undocumented immigrants. Fear of they have really nowhere to go. There are so many barriers, right? There's a language barrier. Even if there is a shelter, sometimes they're not aware that that is an option or a possibility. You know, if you have 6 or 7 kids, some of them maybe cannot go if they're older than 14 and they are boys. So there's a lot of things that we see that may be a little different, but at the end of the day, just like Kelly said, It is that power and control. It is that isolation. It is that that generational, right? This has been happening for years and years and years within their families. So it is normal to them. Many times it's let me say for the children, not knowing those consequences that will later come up in life, whether, a boy who was in that home growing up in that domestic violence environment will grow up to be an abuser, or if that girl will end up finding someone like the dad. And as you said, Ms. Walker, definitely understanding that it can be a male victim as well. Mainly we work with women and we refer, kind of that power dynamic. But yes, there can be male victims. For them, they are harder to report. That's what we've encountered. We do have some victims that are male, but they don't come forward as easily as women do. And for us also, it's like a lot of strangulation. We've seen that DV strangulation go up and up and up. We're so fortunate to have such a great relationship with the forensic strangulation nurse, because she is just a light. And it's so good to see that even in meeting her for something that is so sensitive that happened, that there is that hope. And that's a question of the one place experience.
And you mentioned something like there are men who are victims, but also there are same-sex relationships that incur domestic violence. So do you see a difference in the amount of reporting that goes on with a same-sex couple?
At HICA, we certainly do see, we've had very few, maybe we can count on one hand. It's not something that they usually come forward to, or maybe they don't know that there are resources for them as well. It's probably not the easiest to find a shelter if it is a male partnership, but very few in the Hispanic community. And that is generational too. It's not maybe as an acceptable thing as, although we are in 2022, just a very conservative community.
Okay, Danna, your turn.
Yeah. So for me, I work directly with either the victim or the survivor. And I deal with a lot of emotional and psychological abuse, which is very hard to prove. And what that looks like, it may be name calling, it can escalate into, their self-esteem issues, embarrassment, threaten the victim or the survivor. So sometimes that may look like, if it's a victim, then maybe we need to do a safety plan, right? But if it's a survivor, then maybe we need to work through some of the trauma that they're experiencing. I don't think a lot of people understand that depression and anxiety comes with trauma. And it's a lot of mental work that goes into walking on eggshells every day for years. And there's a lot of fear that's instilled in the victims. And so just helping them to kind of work through all these different emotions and psychological things that they may be experiencing.
So you each touched on this a little bit, but I want to go back to having a deeper conversation on why is it difficult for victims to identify domestic violence and to identify abusers?
Because abusers do not walk around with a tattoo or a sticker on their forehead that says, I am an abuser, right? They're very sweet and kind and attractive and all the things, right? I mean, they can say all the right words and they're really good at in that honeymoon period, right? Things are great. And what might seem like a positive thing, right? Oh, he's he's calling me at work to check in, or he's bringing flowers, or he's this. Really, when you can look back on a situation, you know that those actually were maybe some red flags, that things were moving kind of too quickly, or that he was trying to keep tabs on you. But they don't walk around, they don't act this way with their friends either, I think is the other thing, right? So like someone might come forward and say, hey, I'm experiencing these things, and this is what my husband or boyfriend is doing. And then people that they're with, neighbors or coworkers, will be like, seriously, like he's great at work, like he's an awesome friend, like, oh, college, he's great, because they only do this. That's part of domestic violence, right? It's not, we're not calling it community violence, right? Which it turns out it actually does impact the whole community, but they're doing this in the home to this one person. They're not acting this way with everyone else. So it's easy for them to kind of hide.
Those are some awesome points, Kelly. I want to kind of go back to what Anna said about it kind of being generational. Like it's been normalized in their family of origin. I see that a lot with the women that I work with, and also in popular culture. You know, the teenagers have words like frenemies. You know, like, you know, what's that? So we're friend and enemies. Also, popular culture kind of looks at like Real Housewives or wives of wherever. And you can see in the relationships that they're not really good relationships, but this is how like we're learning like the culture. I was actually doing a victim support group, and a movie came to mind. I don't know if you guys, well, you probably seen A Pretty Woman. And, you know, in that I realized like during my time, the culture was even like they were glamorizing prostitution. I was like, oh my goodness, like that was like one of my favorite movies, but I didn't really realize like, oh, like, you know, they're glamorizing something or relationship that's not good. And so a lot of times I think that, and I see that, you know, people are looking at different things within the home and outside of the home, and just not really learning what a healthy relationship looks like.
I agree with you, Danna. Definitely what we encounter is that generational, right? It happened with grandma, it happened with their aunt, their cousin. So it's just normal. And then sometimes we see re-victimization. So, you know, they end at one relationship, they built up that courage and it's over. And then I get a call again and it's a different person abusing them. But the same things. And then there's a lot of comparison. Well, maybe he doesn't, or he hasn't tried to strangulate me yet. Or maybe he doesn't break things in the home, but he's doing all of the other things. So, you know, lowering that bar constantly, trying to rationalize, you know, I'm going to stay for the kids. Seeing that power and control dynamic, a lot of the community that we encounter, the women do not necessarily work. So they solely depend on that income, on that man. Where are they going to go? They also don't necessarily have family. Where are they going to, you know, go to if there is no room in the shelter, or if there are 7 kids in the home? So we do a lot of educating. We really strive on educating them on resources, on self-talk to themselves. You know, like I also conduct support group, and I tell them, like, do you even know like what your favorite color is, what you like to eat, how you used to like to get dressed, because they've been so diminished so many times. Like, why are you wearing makeup? Who are you going to go see? It's often an accusation of cheating. Or why are you working so late? Why didn't you ask for permission? Time things, time to go to the grocery store, you know, 20 minutes, why are you taking longer? So it's a lot of education, a lot of working with them, a lot of trying to make them not feel isolated, that they're not alone, that this is not the only happening to them. As you said, Ms. Walker, this does not discriminate, right? It's like cancer. It just happens and can happen to anyone, but it's who has the resources to get the help that they need, to walk away, to keep it quiet, to get a divorce. And not many do that, right?
So important note is that we're having some pretty difficult conversations here. So if anyone listening feels the need that you have to step away, it is perfectly okay. Please take care of yourself. And if you or someone you know needs help, please call the 24-hour crisis line at 205-322-4878. 205-322-4878. And the last four numbers there spell out HURT. Oh, so let's all take a breath. That's some pretty deep stuff, but it's definitely a needed conversation that we need to have. And it's a conversation that shouldn't just happen behind closed doors. So what are you doing to help educate the community? Because as we said, this happens in homes, but as Kelly mentioned, it also impacts the community. So what are your efforts in the community to help educate people on this isn't shameful, this isn't something that somebody deserves, and all the other stigmas that go along with what a person may feel going through a domestic violence situation?
Do you want me to go first again?
Sure.
I'll share. You guys can take the next turn. But people are constantly reaching out to us at One Place, asking for us to speak at different events to different groups to college campuses, and we try to fulfill as many of those requests as we can. And when we do that, we're making sure, because One Place is a multi-agency center, so we have staff from YWCA who work at our building. We have staff from HICA who work at our building. Birmingham Police Department is in our building, the sheriff's office. So we have all of these people that are collaborating, and when we go out, we are asking someone else from the YWCA to come with us and be on this panel and speak as a YWCA advocate. Tell this community what you're doing and why we need to be talking about it. And then Anna's on a panel with us talking about things. So we talk to church groups. We talk to on college campuses. We try to teach classes out in the community. I'm learning a lot about the science of hope, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit later. So we're trying to bring that to the community in different environments. We talk about the other program that I run here for kids. And so we're getting in front of school counselors that, like, you can refer kids to this program that we have, but also here's all these other resources. Like, you probably have families in your school that have things going on, right, that are experiencing domestic violence. Here's our brochure, and let's try to remove that shame, right? Because I think that's why people, I think that's the biggest thing, is that, like, it's been portrayed as this, there's something wrong with me because I've allowed this to happen, right? Or it happens in my house. But we know that, like, domestic violence does affect the community. It's affecting those kids. It's affecting the safety of the community. And I'll just throw a statistic out there that the people at the DA's office have been looking at the homicides, which we know are really kind of at all-time highs, right, in our county and in the city right now. And they've been looking at the data for the last 3 years. And last year, over 70% of the known homicide offenders in the county had a previous domestic violence charge. So that could have been a domestic violence misdemeanor charge or a felony charge 5 years ago, 1 year ago, and now that person has gone on and killed someone in the community. And those are not just domestic violence homicides. That was someone killed in a drive-by or gang-related thing or whatever other kind of shooting we're experiencing. So this domestic violence stuff is often an indicator of more negative behavior that's going to happen. So it really is a community issue, and we need to be talking about this in all areas whenever we can.
I'm going to stick with you for a little while longer because you do Camp Hope. Tell us about Camp Hope.
Sure. So Camp Hope America is a national program that was created specifically for kids impacted by domestic violence. So it's in 23 states. We brought it here to Alabama this year, and kids can be referred from school counselors, from outside therapists, from our on-site partners. Anna has referred several families to the program. And we are just aiming to give kids kind of their child back and teach them that they they can be a kid and they can kind of break this cycle, and that no matter what's happened to them, they can still believe in themselves, believe in others, believe in their dreams. So we have monthly events, fun events for the kids, touring a fire station, going hiking, going to the Humane Society, playing games together. And then we also have a week of summer camp where they get to go to sleepaway camp, do all kinds of fun challenge by choice activities, and see that they can set goals and do hard things, and that there's people supporting them. And we teach the kids about hope. They read about hope heroes who have struggled, real life people. Trevor Noah, who was born illegally because he was biracial, right? Like, what's his story? How did he struggle through that? Where did he find support and an outlet? And then how did he become successful? So we've got hope coaches from the community, people from the police department, from the U.S. Attorney's office, from various churches that serve as hope coaches, that just interact and get together with the kids and kind of let them know that they're not alone. So, and the program is right now for kids ages 7 to 13.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
It's nice to know that that there is hope. And yes, we'll talk about hope a little bit later. Because domestic violence is a community issue, can you talk about some specific action steps organizations can do to be proactive if they encounter a staff member who's experiencing domestic violence?
I would say reach out to someone, don't be afraid to ask. Sometimes you do have to be direct, and provide resources, right? If you know what resources are in the community, then you can point someone the right place, where to go. And obviously you could start by one place. Everything is there. Sometimes a person just wants to file a PFA, which is a protection from abuse order, and maybe not a police report, or they want to file a police report, and both things can be done there, whether it's with one of the detectives that we have on site, or it could be a Hoover police officer that we can call to one place to come. It's a safe, hopeful environment. It is not to say anything negative about police departments, but they're stale. It's scary. And here you have those safety doors, that safety net, an advocate guiding you through the process. So reaching out, knowing what resources are in the community, educating yourself so that you can reach out to someone else who is in need.
And while you're talking, Anna, tell us about some of the community programs that you do.
So we do a lot with our community, whether it's Fiesta, which just happened not too long ago. Even though HICA has 4 different programs, we do provide resources, pamphlets. We have little cards that have victims' rights on there. So part of it is in English, the other side is in Spanish. So, if a police officer encounters a victim, or if somebody's passing through a community event, we have those resources there. And sometimes, those are small as a credit card. So it could be something that you can slip in if you're suffering through something like that. We do trainings, a lot of trainings, whether it's with the Birmingham Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, along with the YWCA, just reaching out to the communities, with the DA's office. Working and building those relationships, to me, has been the most important thing, because out of that has come, hey, I know someone, I referred someone, I sent someone knew someone, and they went to HICA. HICA's been around for 22 years, but if you don't know it exists, through these partnerships, through these outreach events, even if somebody is doing an event from our community economic development program, which does opening businesses up or anything of that, they will take the brochures from my program, from the Strong Families program, to bring out to the community so that they are aware, that if maybe somebody may need to reach out to us if they are a victim of domestic violence.
Because we're saying if it's 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men, everybody that you encounter, every 4th person has been in a situation. So being at a community event is a great way to just pass out the information, whether that event is talking about domestic violence or not. It happens everywhere. So Dana, you want to talk a little bit about what you do, and if you do any sort of community outreach or how you partner with someone doing community outreach?
Yeah, so I do partner. We actually just had a collaboration that we did with one place, as well as we had a judge there. We did a panel discussion, and it was actually in the community at a church. And so it was very, informative, kind of letting everybody know about the different services that each organization provides, as well as, domestic violence is not just physical, violence. There are other components to it. And just provide that information, especially in a church, environment, because like you said, this is a very tough conversation. And so just normalizing the conversation, like it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to reach out, have pamphlets available. And so, yeah, we do go out and kind of talk about just normalizing the conversation and making sure that people understand that there are services out there that can assist them.
And one service tonight is not particularly, it's a community service. We're doing a candlelight vigil tonight at 6 o'clock at City Walk, where we'll be honoring the survivors and remembering those who died from domestic violence. So we'll be out there and there'll be some inspirational words. It'll be a time for us to reflect and hopefully come together as a community to realize that this is horrendous. And as Kelly mentioned, if 70% lead to homicides, I mean, we need to do this is bigger than what's happening in someone's home. Because I remember before growing up, people were like, well, whatever happens inside your home, you keep it inside your home. Well, now it's going outside of the home. And I'm going to quote Kelly here because this is very important, because I think I have violated what you just said. When someone says, comes to you and says that they are experiencing some domestic violence, the first thing out of your mouth is, you need to leave. And as we were talking before, that's not always possible for a variety of reasons. And when they come to you and they tell you that they're experiencing domestic violence situations, you should, and again, I'm quoting Kelly, because she is the expert on this, thank them for sharing, ensure them that you'll keep this information confidential, because that's the last thing they need, is to walk into a workplace or any place and everybody's looking at them side eye saying whatever they're saying. That's just one of the most uncomfortable feelings that you can have. Ask them if they want you to connect them to services. Again, we have our crisis hotline, or if you know of any, if you have a pamphlet, if you go to HICA, anywhere, say, yeah, connect them there, but do not say you need to get out of there. And even though you may feel it, putting that's adding additional pressure to what's already going on. And they need to make informed decisions. And maybe leaving is the right thing, but they need to come to that decision on their own. And as I think Dana had mentioned before, like sometimes you need a safety plan, you need an escape route. It's not always easy just to pack up and leave. Not saying that people don't do it or shouldn't do it, but it's not your decision. It's the person's decision. They have autonomy. They need to make what's the best decision that they think for their family at that moment. So give them the tools and just be a really good friend and let them make that decision.
Right. And I'll just add,
Anna. Yes,
yeah,
please.
I was just going to say, I think Dana and Anna can speak to this probably way more than I can, but we are not the experts in that person's life, right? They are the expert, and they often know, they do know that abusers' personality or their thought pattern, right? So it might be easy for us on the outside to say, like, well, you came here and you're telling us all of these things, and like, you need to go do this, and you should do this, and then you need to leave, and then you need to hear and go to your mom, and then that'll be it. And like, that's not for us to say. They might be going back and we might see that as a failure, right? Like, I just spent 2 hours talking with this person and we did this, and then she went back. Why did she go back? It's complicated because of kids, because of finances, because she knows if she leaves, he's going to escalate. Like, we know that the time that a woman leaves a relationship and actually like makes that decision to leave and starts to do that process, that's the most dangerous time for women. Because if we remember to the beginning, we said domestic violence is about power and control. And when that victim is saying like, nope, I am taking back control, I am leaving you, then that abuser has totally lost control. So they might escalate. And that's a lot of times when people are killed by their abuser. So we need to make sure that when we're working with victims, that we're asking them the right questions and helping them to take the right next step, which is going to be different from person A and person B and person C that you might see in a day. I don't know, Anna and Dana, if there's anything to add to that, but I think we can't jump to conclusions and make our goals someone else's goals. It needs to be the victim. And that also ties into hope, right? Like we need to help them set the right goal so that it's manageable and they can meet that goal. And then they see like, oh, I was able to do that. So I believe I can make the next hard step that I should make to get myself safer.
So I'll just add to that, Kelly. So true. My job is not to tell anybody what to do. My job is to give them the resources that there are, know that everything they share with us is confidential, that if they want some of those resources, who can I communicate with? Are you going to give me permission and do that release of information? Can I contact the Y? Can I speak to the officer? Can I speak to the DA's office? Can I speak to a counselor if they're in need of counseling and they want to do that? You can't force anybody to do anything. It is on their terms, on their time. Is it frustrating? I want to take them out of that situation? Of course, but I know that the average of going back to an abuser is 7 to 10 times. So we have to go in knowing that, and knowing that. And I always tell them, if you're not ready today, it's okay. But you have these tools and you can call me again, and you don't have to be embarrassed, because my job is not to judge you, but to guide you and to accompany you and to support you in any way that I can.
And I would like to add that, a part of that process is validating their feelings, because a lot of times they feel less than or dismissed or not seen or heard. And so a big part of the process is allowing them to just be. When we're having these difficult conversations, we have to understand that it's difficult for us as well. And we'll try to get out of it some kind of way. And that's one way, is to suggest something. Well, maybe if you would do this, and that's what family members and friends do. I'm a licensed professional counselor, so I've been trained to have these conversations, but it does get uncomfortable for me as well. But we have to learn how to sit in it with them so that they can move to the other side of it and not try to fix it. My job is not to fix it. We're going to sit here. I'm going to allow them to feel, to be. And I'm going to say and gesture, I see you, I hear you. What is it that you need to do? And I think that's a big part of it that some people miss, is that like Kelly said, they know their situation. They are the expert, and they need to figure out, and they will figure out a way to get out, but it has to be on their terms, or we're dealing with the power control issue again.
So Anna, you mentioned that it's about 7 times before, on average, this, of course, this isn't everyone actually leaves. Do you see a difference between the first time and then the 7th time when they call you?
So I know that's the average, but because I deal with an immigrant community, I mean, what they tell me, because I try to educate them on that, and just letting them know, like, if you're not ready today, it's okay. We can try. If something else happens, we always make sure that we have a safety plan almost on every conversation, period. The end, like, it's so important. If another incident happens, please make a police report. If it doesn't happen, it's as if you don't document it, it's as if it didn't happen. So these are like suggestions, recommendations, resources. I don't tell anybody what to do. But my victims tell me, 7 to 10 times, I've been back 36 times. And usually for our community, it's when it's really bad. And by really bad is, it's been a beating that they've never gotten, or it's been strangulation and it's the 4th time. And maybe this time they lost consciousness. Sometimes I'm tired of it. It's been 20 years and I'm over it. Sometimes it's having those communications, that peer support, with us multiple times, building up a little bit of courage. Sometimes it's participating in support group while still being in that domestic violence situation, but then learning, wow, I identify myself in this, in this, in this, and I don't remember what my favorite color was. I don't remember. So building that self-esteem back up, and then finding the courage, the time, the means, maybe getting a little job and putting some money aside to be able to leave, creating a plan that's going to be more sustainable. So that's kind of how we see it. I always tell them the average is 7 to 10 times, but not for our victims usually.
It's like I'm just breathing. What you said is so important, is that we have to honor the lived experiences of others. We are not the professionals in their lives. They know when and how they need to do it. And as you all have said, that you just definitely give them information and give them the tools to do it. Tina says, yes, absolutely. It's crucial to exchange dialogue on their terms, because you're not coming at it from the I told you so, or I can't believe that you're back again, or why did you do this, or anything like that. So it's like a judgment-free zone, because everybody needs a safe place to land. Everybody needs a safe place to land. So now each of you work with families, thus is often able to see firsthand the effects of DV on victims and their children. How does this intergenerational trauma perpetuate this cycle of abuse? So Danna, I'm going to let you start this one.
That's a really, really good question. And I've done a lot of research on intergenerational trauma from a professional viewpoint, but also a personal one as well. And it's transmitted through our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. It's transmitted through the relationship that we have within our families. And I think that we need to understand that it's not just blatantly out there, it's transmitted through a thought. So Ms. Walker talked about the thought that what happens at home stays at home. Well, that's harmful when you're looking at victims that need to seek help outside of the home, right? It'll keep victims silent. So I can't tell anybody, I can't talk about this, because I was taught that what happens in the household stays in the household. And so that will affect, also that thought pattern, but how the person feels about themselves. So what I feel, how I feel and think don't matter. I have to keep this secret. And the behavior would be to not tell, to people please, to stay in a relationship that could be potentially fatal. Other, kind of thoughts that are passed along, sweep it under the rug. So, and we don't literally say that's what we're going to do, but we don't deal with it. We don't talk about it. There's no conversation. Again, families are not trained to have those difficult conversations. And so the problem doesn't ever get addressed. And, again, that's, on the victims, the social emotional part of that is how I'm feeling doesn't matter. Or no one cares, when in actuality, if they were provided with some other things in those relationships, like it's okay to share your feelings, it's okay to share your thoughts, but we don't promote that. Specifically if you were brought up in an authoritarian household, you do what I say or there are going to be consequences. That is taught really early. So we learn to suppress ourselves, our thoughts, our feelings, who we are, and that leads to people pleasing. And so what mama thinks, what daddy thinks, or auntie thinks is more or better than what I think of myself. And that could be, later on in life when you're dealing with a mate, potentially abusive mate, that can lead to even more problems because you can't identify it because it was your family of origin most of your life to kind of feel like that. And so we need to understand the dynamics that happens within the family that kind of perpetuate the issue, those thought patterns, the things that we tell ourselves. As well as, you know, understanding mental health and what happens to us. We don't talk about trauma. We don't talk about when the first time I saw the ACE screener, I was livid because I had almost like over half of them. And we never talked about, you know, and I can remember personally, we never talked about trauma. We never talked about things that happened. You don't talk about that. We don't talk about that outside the house. You don't. And so, and I wasn't allowed to feel. That creates a numbness. A lot of my clients are numb. They don't have the sensory or the ability because they were early on, these things happened to them and they weren't able to express it. So we don't deal with that mental health component. We don't deal with the social emotional component. And it's almost as if it's not there. And so we really have to work on educating parents about parenting, like what's age appropriate and what's not age appropriate. It's okay to feel and help them allow their kids to feel, to be, to do. A lot of times, again, we're taught to be obedient or there's going to be a consequence. And we take these into our relationships and we don't understand that this is something that's generational, that's been ingrained into us as children. And, you know, instead of saying, okay, it's okay to have a voice or provide kids with choices. You can have either this or that so that they can understand that there's a different dynamics of a relationship than just being obedient. And that about those consequences, because a lot of times clients or victims think that they blame themselves, like, well, maybe if I would have done this and maybe if I would have done that. And so they go into blaming themselves for the situation alongside the abuser blaming them too, and society, because we blame shift. It's just shifting of blame, and it's always on the victim. And so a lot of these things, again, is embedded in our relationships, how we raise our kids, the things that are going on at home. And some ways to kind of counter that is to provide information and education on different parenting skills, on relationships, conflict management. A lot of people just don't know how to manage conflict. And so that kind of would help a little bit in as far as like the victims, them being able to identify some things, you know, what's healthy, what's not healthy in a relationship.
So you mentioned the ACE screening. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so the ACE screening stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And it was a study done some time ago where it's a list of 10 questions about things that happened to you between the ages of birth and I think 18. Some of those things were like, if your parents got divorced, were you abused sexually? Were you abused physically? Did you have a parent that was incarcerated? And so all these things add up and give you an ACE score. And you can kind of tell different things by this score, about how much, because all those things are traumas. And so you can kind of tell the trajectory of someone's kind of like their coping skills, you know. So if they had therapy, or if they haven't had therapy, it can even end in like a person having maybe some physical difficulties. You can get sick, you know, if you have bad coping skills. Say somebody's smoking, they may get cancer. And so there's a correlation between how many traumas we've had, our health, our thinking, our mental health. And so that's what the ACE study was all about.
So it's more like a holistic view. So I guess it's important for us to realize that domestic violence isn't isolated. There are other factors that, and I think that's what makes it, it's like layered. It makes it sort of complicated for people to understand or wrap their arms around it. Anna, I know you mentioned a little bit about intergenerational trauma in your work too. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that?
So yeah, we see, you know, I don't like to use the word machismo or macho because it's always kind of linked to the Latin community, but it really is everywhere else. Um, so, you know, there's really no laws in our countries, or maybe if they are, they're not enforced. If there's domestic violence, it's a very, very quiet, isolating thing. Um, your families almost encourage it, and I see it here. The families got together, they discuss, and you should stay. And, you know, I'll be like, okay, so, but is your family in that relation? Was your family member the one that was just strangled? You know, so we go through those things so that they can have thoughts for themselves. As Dana was saying, it's so important, and they lose themselves in what everybody else wants and not what they need or what they want or what they wish would be different. But we see it, it's, you know, the grandma was abused. And so if you know that, and that's how her grandpa was, and then her mom entered the same marriage, and that's how she grew up. And then, so, you know, she finds someone who is just like that. And then it just keeps repeating itself. Also, the people fleeing, you know, the Latin American countries for various reasons, there's a lot of trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. And so they're very vulnerable. You know, it's easy for someone who is manipulative, an abuser, to pick on those people, to see the vulnerability, to see how they can manipulate situations. And as Kelly was saying, they're not tattooed. You know, that first dinner, movie, dance, it's not like, hey, by the way, I'm gonna hit you in, you know, 6 months, or I'm gonna insult you, or, you know, it's never like that. It's always sweet and kind and just part of that manipulation to get you to fall. And then it's hard when you're in deep, and it's harder when you have kids. But it comes from just, you know, we work on, let's try to break that cycle. And you have that power and you can do that. Because I always tell them, like, what, you know, what do you want your kids to see? They always worry about breaking up that marriage. And I said, but you can both love and co-parent and teach your kids that you actually are strong because you were not willing to have anybody mistreat you any longer. You decided enough was enough. And that's so a child looking up to a parent as a hero. You know, you chose to have a better life, not just for you, but for us to see something different. So just kind of teaching that education component so that they can learn that there are other ways. They don't have to be stuck there. Even if they've been in it for 20 years, there is a new light, a new life. And I always tell them, I'm real. You may have to start from zero, but that peace that you can sleep with at night is priceless. And they always take that into account. It is priceless.
That's a very good thought. So now let's talk about collaboration. Intimate partner violence is a huge challenge, and no one agency can eradicate it on their own. What role does collaboration play in fostering, improving the experience of survivors as they navigate these complex systems? And I think, Kelly, you started off talking about one place, so I'm gonna let you lead this one again.
Sure. That's why family justice centers were created, because we can't, like, law enforcement can't solve this issue on its own. We can't just send someone to the YW shelter and hope that they find their way without extra support, right? So, I mean, at one place, we have multiple agencies here trying to best assist victims when they come in, and we're doing it right to, like, make things more supportive for that victim to hopefully reduce any extra trauma that they might experience while telling their story or making a police report or filling out a protection order, and hopefully maybe reducing the amount of places that they need to drive to, right? Or how many times they might have to tell their story. and also doing that in a very lovely setting here at One Place. I mean, our rooms, our lobby, everything is, I mean, it looks like a living room when you're in here. Like, it's nice. It's not like making a police report down at a station. And then also collaboration is just, I think, huge for the people that are doing the work of helping survivors. I mean, I know that like Anna can just speak to that a lot just from like being on site here at One Place over the last like 6 months. But I've been at One Place for 3 years, and just it really, you spend time with people, right? We have 2 Birmingham police officers here, 2 detectives that we can learn from them. We can see what their caseload is like and how many interviews they're having to go do at Prescott House throughout the week, or how many clients are calling for them, right? And what they're told, what their system kind of looks like, that I wouldn't know. We wouldn't understand that if we weren't actually sharing space with law enforcement officers. And then on the flip side, law enforcement or the DA's office and those kind of bigger system, criminal justice type system staff are learning from the more soft-sided kind of advocates and counselors and nurses that we have here about what it looks like to maybe be a little more trauma informed or kind. And then we can also just go to each other and ask questions when we need to. There can be a client that Anna is working with or on the phone with here in her office, and she's like, yeah, I made a police report. No, I don't have the case number. No, this is what the detective said, or I haven't heard. And then Anna can literally go walk down the hall and go, hey, so can you look up this client? Can you see what this case number is? Who should I contact if she hasn't heard from a detective? Or a client can ask a hypothetical, what would happen if I file a police report? And we can go to the DA's office and say, here's what that timeline would kind of look like, and connect. So we're supporting each other while also better supporting a client. So I mean, collaboration is like, that's my jam. Like, it's so important. It makes the work so much easier, because if we were doing it alone, like you've just heard, it's draining to hear. I mean, Dana, if you're hearing story after story after story and don't have people that you can go to debrief or a resource to send a client to, I mean, right?
Right, yeah, and Kelly is the queen of collaboration. She actually sends out like newsletters and events because a part of that is the work is hard. The work is hard, it is draining. And so to be able to kind of get together every now and then, and woosah, right? Kelly sends links out for that, book club, right? Reading things together and building those relationships. I wish I knew everything, but I don't. And so when I'm having an issue, I know I can reach out to Kelly, or I can reach out to Danielle, or I can reach out to Megan or Anna about different things that I don't know about. And so, yeah, that collaboration piece is beneficial for the clients, the victims and the survivors, but it's also beneficiary for the clinicians as well, and the workers.
So now in our last few minutes, I do want to talk about hope, because these have been some really deep conversations. How do you keep going? I mean, as we've all mentioned, this work is hard. It's hard, and you reach out to each other's, but like, what inspires you? Like, what helps you have hope? Because you're inspiring and you're giving hope to your clients. So what are you doing for yourselves?
That's the hardest question, I think, because I have an incredibly supportive supervisor, a great team at HICA. Even though I'm not in that office, we're always connected. We're always having a team meeting. We're always debriefing on cases. And the support system at One Place, it literally feels like family. So to touch on what Kelly said, collaboration is absolutely everything and very important. The relationships are the most important thing. I've built so many relationships, and they come in hand all the time. They need me, I need them, and we work together. And we all have the same purpose, right? Help that victim with a better outcome. But I will tell you that is probably the one place where I struggle. But there are things. So we have Hope Huddle on Wednesdays. So I don't get to participate as often as I want to because there's a meeting or something going on. But with Molly from One Place, you know, it's just like a 30-minute reset. We do finger yoga, we stretch, we whatever. She sets things for every month. So right now, like one of the offices, one of the empty offices has like a treadmill. So we have like a let's walk, you know, whether it's at home or whatever, and then just chart it for the month of October. So keeping wellness in mind, we also have a really cool room. Kelly, remind me what the name is. I've gone in there once, but it was like, Anna, go in there 15 minutes at least. What's it called?
Respite room.
The respite room. And it has like a picture of the beach, a reclining chair, and a little massager. So it's like, you know, disconnect. Yesterday we had a really important meeting at the courthouse with my supervisor. And then my supervisor's like, let's debrief. And just those moments, step out. Those moments are important.
It's good to know. Very good to know. Okay, Danna, we got 4 minutes. Go.
Okay, yeah. I was like, oh, time's running out. So this is personal for me, guys. I have 2 girls, right? I got one 22-year-old and one 9-year-old. So my hope is better days for these 2 girls. Like we have these conversations. I am very intentional about having these conversations because they need to know certain things. And so for me, it's a hope. I keep doing this in hope for that women and children and just families can just love each other and flourish. And so I do a lot of wellness stuff with my girls. I mean, we play fire as lava. We jump on, you know, the couch. We love to laugh. I love to laugh. I love to play and allow children to be children. And so this work is so personal for me.
So I want to thank all of our passionate panelists for doing the work that they do because it's so vital in our community. But the conversation's not over. We have a call to action. We have a candlelight vigil tonight from 6 to 8 at City Walk. Next month, November 17th, we've got Centering Survivors Part 2, which is the personal stories. And finally, if anybody you know needs help or you yourself, please dial the crisis line 205-322-4878. I'll say it again, 205-322-4878. The last 4 letters spell out HURT. It is no shame in calling that number. There are plenty of resources out there for you. And even if it takes you more than once, more than twice, 32, 36 times, it doesn't matter. We want you well, we want you safe, we want you alive. So we've got someone saying, thank you, great talk to all the panelists. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you all.
So we've got 2 minutes. Anybody have any final thoughts, a joke or something to lighten the mood a little bit? And the One Place number is 205-453-7261. And I do want to say, if you call the crisis line and you do not speak English, there are translators for you. So do not be afraid. If you do not speak English, there are translators for you. Getting lots of great comments, like thank you for what you do. It's amazing. Great discussion. Thank you, everyone. This has been great. Again, thank you all for the amazing work that you do and for sharing your voices with me today.
Thank you for having us.
Have an amazing day, and maybe I'll see you tonight at the vigil. More thank yous. We got some hand claps. Some emojis. More emojis. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.